How about them Irish?
I can't take it anymore. I need a national championship.
This is the Four Horsemen Podcast.
The Notre Dame Fighting Irish had not won a New Year's Six bowl game since 1994. And Steve, in the span of 8 days, they did not win just one, but two of them, marking one of the greatest runs in Notre Dame football history. Welcome to the Four Horsemen Podcast. I'm Dylan, joined by Steve as always, and we've got a lot to get into. Sorry for not being able to do a podcast last week. Schedules got to us, but don't you worry. We're going to cover both the Georgia game, the Penn State game, and preview a national championship edition of the Four Horsemen Podcast. Steve, how are you doing today?
I'm already getting emotional, man. My eyes are tearing up already, and we're 30 seconds into the podcast. Dylan, we have been waiting for this for so long. And we've been starved of it, and we've said time and time again, Marcus Freeman is the guy, and man, have we been vindicated. We've said time and time again that the talent has been escalating year over year, that this is the year that was going to open our window, our championship window. We've been saying all along that the talent has been getting deeper, and with all the rash of injuries that we've experienced, for guys to still continue to come in and plug in place and make their plays and do everything, and to go through the wild range of emotions from that Georgia game to the Penn State game, and now we're exactly 7 days away at the time of this recording, and it doesn't feel real, but it's everything that we've predicted. It's everything we've been talking about. I mean, not to pat ourselves on the back as ball knowers, but do we know ball or what? I mean, it's like we're almost batting 1,000 with almost everything we've said for like going on 7 years now. And it's just 2012. A lot of people, COVID basically time warped us, but 2012 was 13 years ago, and we're back at the top of the mountain. And spoiler alert for the preview against Ohio State, there's obviously a very good chance that we lose this game. But there's still a chance that we win. And this team has had team of destiny vibes, and there's just something about it. There's no quitting them, no matter what. And the fact that we've gotten to this point, holy crap, man! It's just magical. It's, again, I didn't think I was going to get emotional this early into the podcast, but holy crap. It feels good. It feels so good to finally be where we are.
Absolutely. Let it all out, man. Let's talk about 2012 for a second, because that was a big year for me, Steve. I'm born in 97. I started watching Notre Dame in 07, but I would watch maybe a game or two as a kid when I'm 9, 10 years old. I'm not sitting there. My dad wasn't a big fan, so I'm not sitting there watching the games with people. It was very much self-guided because I had uncles who liked Notre Dame, but they didn't live with us. And I would always wear Notre Dame stuff. I was so proud of Notre Dame. It was the school I wanted to go to, even though nobody told young Canadian me how expensive and nearly impossible it is to go there. But it's what I wanted to do. And I'd always have the gear on. And year after year, I'd get more into the sport because I got more into football in general, right? Like, as you would imagine, I'm a hockey guy. But I got more and more into football. And every year, we would kind of lose to Michigan early, and that would kind of kill the season for me. And I would watch a few games here and there, but it's hard to be a committed, dedicated fan when you don't have someone to teach you or bring you in to what we love. That 2012 season was the most remarkable season in my life, and it single-handedly turned me into, now I'm getting emotional, Steve. It turned me into a cult member, okay? Because I had never felt the joys like that before in anything in life, right? That team, I thought God chose us to win. because the amount of games we were winning on last second field goals in overtime on goal line stands, it was just the most ridiculous season of all time. And for me to be early in my Notre Dame fandom, to experience that hooked me. I have never missed a game since. I fell so deep into it. That's when I started these projects of mine about counting national championships and what's the right number. And then, we'll talk about this later, but my model on all-time rankings, it all came from 2012. And this season has brought out a lot of that. It's this team is special. This coach is special. This program is special. And we've been suffering for a long time. You can hear it in our entrance song, right? You're in the background saying, I need a national championship. And we're really close to one. And Steve, I don't know if we're going to win this, but I can tell you now this season has been a remarkable success, and I think we're ahead of schedule. I think Freeman is just starting to get his guys in this program. I don't think anyone expected us to get this far. And here we are. So with that said, let's talk about how we got here. So the Georgia game. My God. Steve, we'd never won those games before. When have we ever gone up against an opponent with better talent that everyone's picking to win, even without their quarterback playing? By the way, Carson Beck plays that game. It makes no difference. And not just beat them, but we kind of beat them soundly. Like you look at the stats afterwards, Steve. I got them up here. Notre Dame rushing yards, at least. Total yards, not really, but rushing yards, 154-62. We held Georgia, the Georgia Bulldogs, to 2.1 yards per carry. Notre Dame, 4.2 yards per carry. We beat them on the line of scrimmage. We beat them in the trenches. We kind of dominated them in the trenches. Now, the offensive line struggled for the most part of that game because, look, Georgia's got maybe the best defensive line we'll see all year. The game coming up might be the exception to that. But in the fourth quarter, we leaned on them. We just out-physicaled them. We just beat them down and wore them out. And by the time that fourth quarter came around, when you needed long drives, boy, did we get them. And that's what iced the game. We ran out the clock on Georgia. And we did it without playing our best game. Riley Leonard, 90 yards in the air, 80 yards rushing. Jeremiah Love didn't play to his full potential that game. I mean, things were clogged up, but defensively, we were faster. We were more aggressive. We were more physical. I couldn't believe what I saw. 23-10, Notre Dame wins by 13 points as an underdog. Steve, talk me through your perspective on that game and kind of how you were feeling.
I knew that we were going to compete, and early on in that game, I was my normal level of worried, but I had really reached a point where I went from worried to confident pretty early on in that game. And I'll tell you when it was. It was Adon Schuler laying the absolute lumber on the running back. I forget which running back it was, but forcing the fumble when, Georgia was driving in that game. I think they had it inside our 15-yard line, and Adon just comes in and absolutely claps the running back right there in the tackle box, forces one of the most bizarre fumbles I've ever seen. And Notre Dame recovers, and of course we didn't go down and score or anything, but at that point, it's a game of trench warfare. It's a game of field positioning. It's a good old fashioned mollywopping at the line of scrimmage on both sides, but just knowing that, just seeing our defense play fast, play ferocious, play fearless, that's a defense that did not exist in the past for Notre Dame, and it does now. And you need some sort of offensive competency to win national championships. And I think that Joe Burrow and the 2019 LSU team proved that you can win with almost exclusively offensive alone. But defense and special teams is what can keep you in games. And it's what, even when the offense is not working, and if you can stick in long enough, good things will happen. And that's kind of the recurring theme over the last two games of these two remarkable wins against Georgia and Penn State. So that happens, and okay, we're trading punches blow for blow. They go up 3-0, 3-3. We go back down, 6-3. But then it's that middle eight. It's that middle eight that we've been talking about, and it's the middle eight 2 games in a row. 2 games in a row. It might have even been in the Indiana game, which seems like an eternity ago. I forget at this point, but notably, obviously there's the strip sack fumble from RJ Oben coming around the edge. Junior Tuihalamaka falls on it inside, the 15-yard line. And then sure enough, one play, all it takes for Riley Leonard to go over the top with some play action finding Bo Collins. Bang, touchdown, massive momentum swing. Instead of being up 6-3, or there is a possibility, distinct possibility, that Georgia goes down and maybe they don't score a touchdown, but they might get in the field goal range, make that a 6-6 game at halftime. Instead, it's 13-6, and then Jaden Harrison opens up his account at Notre Dame. Cha-ching, how are you? 98 yards to the house to open up the second half, and all of a sudden it's 20-3. We're up by 17, and then at that point it's just you don't even have to really worry about the run too much. Just plug holes and send guys downhill and try to get after the a inexperienced quarterback. Not a bad one. He's a good quarterback, and a lot of respect to Gunnar Stockton. He played gritty as hell. But just those plays, just a ferocious, fast, ruthless defense and special teams, and just the right bounces is what kept us and sticking around long enough for things to break our way. And it felt so different, and it was so relieving just to be heading into that fourth quarter knowing just manage the game from here and we win, which is something that we're not used to against elite SEC teams.
Boy, wasn't that a nerve-wracking finish to the game, though. I know you were probably feeling what I was feeling, because we had been there before and we've let it slip, and not this time. In hindsight, we didn't need more than 17 points. After the Jaden Harrison touchdown, it was over. Didn't feel like it, but, that's what ultimately happened. 4 things, Steve, and I hope I remember all of them. You said fearless. Absolutely fucking yes. Both sides of the ball. And I want to talk about in particular the responses. This is 2 games in a row now, Steve, where the offense has been down. And what do? They go back and score. And you look at the Penn State game. We're going to get into that in a minute. But for Notre Dame to, okay, we're down 10. Go get points before half. And then to come out in the second half of that Penn State game and just dominate for a huge drive. The offense showed up when it mattered. And then at the end of the game, Penn State takes the lead with 4 minutes left. What does our offense do? Hits Jaden Greathouse on one of the nastiest moves I've ever seen. Pulled on 2 DBs. So fearless is it. They respond to everything. I had tweeted during the game about the Georgia game, about the Texas A&M game, where Notre Dame went down 3-0. They respond, right? That's what you have to do. And that's what this team has. They're the toughest team mentally I've ever seen. And I'm not just talking Notre Dame. I've never seen any football team this mentally tough, and the desire to win, the will to win is nothing like I've ever seen before. They just refuse to lose. They're just like, fuck you. Like, we are not losing this game.
Compound on that, and I'll go right back to you, but the will to win and the refuse to lose, think about the Riley Leonard up over his legs to just get that first down. Just anything what you can do. But yeah.
Absolutely. I want to talk about Don Schuler for a second, because you mentioned his name. I have so much respect for this kid, and I really hope this comes through to him and his parents and stuff, because you know how recruiting can get, Steve, right? We focus on stars. And Don Schuler's a 4-star kid, nothing, no complaints about him from anybody during recruitment. However, that was the Peyton Bowen class. And Peyton Bowen, for those of you who don't remember, 5-star safety, was committed to Notre Dame, pulled some absurd shenanigans on signing day, flips to Oregon, then flips to somewhere else. I don't even know where he is at this point. Oklahoma. And Notre Dame fans felt deflated because you had lost Keeley early in that class. You lose Bowen on signing day. Your big Yep. So you're oh god. So your safety. You feel like you just lost your safety. And this kid Schuler, that nobody really we liked him, but nobody really viewed him in the same light. Dude, he's a redshirt freshman or a sophomore. Okay, he is so good. And when people talk about Notre Dame having a talent disadvantage against some of these teams, to an extent they're right, but these kids aren't household star names yet. And that's what people are missing, right? Schuler and Watts, I think, is a better safety duo than what Ohio State has. And nobody will give Schuler that credit, but I think he is that good. He is a great downhill player. He plays with tenacity, and he's so young. He's going to develop. I just wanted to give him credit. I thought he's been fantastic these playoffs. Middle eight. Marcus Freeman outcoached Kirby Smart. I just want to let that linger for a second. Think about this. When Nick Saban retires, Kirby Smart is anointed the next, he is the greatest coach in college football now. He is the guy. And everyone said, right, yeah, Carson Beck's hurt, but if anyone can find a way, it's Kirby.
Shout out Dabo for fumbling that bag. He had the chance. He fumbled it.
He did. Dude, where was Kirby this game? Marcus Freeman, first of all, he's got an analytics guy standing next to him. Do you know how fucking horny that makes me, Mr. Analytics guy here? Right? I love this. They got somebody to tell him what the numbers say. And what the numbers tell him, I can tell you, if we win the coin toss, we're deferring every time. Because of that middle eight. The opportunity to steal a possession at the end of half and then come out and stomp on someone's throat. Just the way they coach that game. The timeouts, the play calls, the fake punt. This is a coach who, let's be real with Marcus Freeman. We all knew right away. This is the man motivator and the relationships guy that you want in a program. He's got those nailed down. Great recruiter. The kids love him. But nobody knew how he was as a head coach when it came to the football decisions, the X's and the O's, when it came to those crunch moments. And Steve, we're here in the national championship game because Marcus Freeman has outcoached every coach he's played other than NIU. That's the fact of the matter. His game plans are great. His mentality to go for things is great. The ability to just get what you need at a timely moment. He's everything we want. And that to outcoach Kirby Smart like that gave me just the absolute biggest of hopes moving forward for this program. I think this is the guy. I think this is a Hall of Fame coach we have. And if he wins, Steve, on Monday, there will be a statue of him at the age of 39 at Notre Dame. Just think about that, okay? You were talking, he's reached Dan Devine level of fame and status within 3 years of the job. It's just nuts. Last point, fourth point, Carson Beck. Listen, I don't want to hear it. I predicted ahead of time if we win, people would say, oh, well, the backup quarterback was in. I don't want to hear it. Stockton came in from behind against Texas in the SEC championship game and won them that football game, okay? Great quarterback. Second of all, Carson Beck isn't particularly mobile. I think we would have had more sacks. I think it would have been a tougher game. It's not like Georgia receivers were getting open. It's not like Carson Beck helps you run for more than 2.1 yards per carry, right? Carson Beck doesn't change shit there, okay? Maybe the game is a little closer final score-wise because he can make a throw or two extra, but they weren't winning that game. Not that day. So those are my thoughts on the Georgia game. I don't know how you celebrate it, but I got into the whiskey and I think I forget the rest of the night.
With the 6-month-old, do you have any idea how ridiculous you look when you're jumping up and down in your living room, audibly, not non-audibly screaming? I'm like just open mouth, jumping up and down, both hands up in the air, fist pumping, and my mouth is open and I'm mouthing words, and the actual decibel levels coming out of my mouth is like quieter than a field mouse. I look like a fucking idiot. But that's the way that I have to celebrate now that I'm in dad mode. But it's almost even sweeter. And yeah, I mean, really the moment that kind of put the icing on the cake, along with that insane, ridiculous Riley Leonard run, was that fake punt. And exactly to your point and all the points that you were just making about head coach Marcus Freeman and outcoaching Kirby Smart. I mean, that was just brilliant. And that's a well-prepared, well-oiled machine. And I think a lot of that also comes from the coordinators. There's great experience with these coordinators, and I think that ultimately might be one of the biggest difference makers in the national championship game. Not to get too out ahead of ourselves in the podcast, we can get over into the Penn State game just really quickly, I'm taking the Four Horsemen for the Georgia game. Dylan is going to be taking the Four Horsemen for the Penn State game just as a programming note. So shout out to all of the above in no particular order whatsoever, but Junior Tui Halamaka, guy was getting through all night. He was coming around that edge, and you're putting Notre Dame on the map. You're putting Notre Dame on the map as pass rushers against a really good offensive line in Georgia. And, the interior for Georgia is obviously significantly better than their edges, and their edges are, their tackles were simply just not as up to par as what they were previously because there has been some roster turnover. But at the end of the day, we are talking about the University of Georgia. You go anywhere up and down there too deep, and you're running into a 4-star or extremely high 5-star coming out of high school. Their average offensive lineman is probably 6'7", 320 pounds. Like, we're not talking about softies. So I don't care that the left tackle did not, or right tackle, whoever the hell it was, that Junior Tua Halamaka was cooking all day, was not as good as who it was in the past. It's the point that he just went out there and was competing, and he was a bit buried in the depth chart, but because of injuries, again, that's a guy stepping up when his number is called. And man, oh man, what a game he played. Now on the other side, R.J. Oben, he only had one tackle all game, and it arguably is the most important tackle of the season. Coming around that edge, sack, fumble, Junior Tua Halamaka falls on it, and then that leads to the that touchdown to end the first half to go up 13-3. And then the very next guy, Jaden Harrison, opening up the second half, as we discussed, with that 98-yard kickoff return. Not putting the game away, but putting us in a point where it's like, all right, pin your ears back and get after this quarterback at that point. It changed the whole complexion of the game to go up 20-3 to start the second half. And then, hey, credit where credit's due. A guy that's got a lot of shit because in retrospect, as we look back, it was because of injuries. He had an injured groin, and it really did not have him perform at the way that we had expected throughout the regular season. But to come out and hit field goals of 44, 48, and 47 in that game, Mitch Jeter, congratulations. You're the fourth horseman of that University of Georgia win.
The Sugar Bowl was won. The curse was ended.
And it was
Steve,
sweet.
Let's transition briefly into this Penn State game because nothing about this game made sense. Like, statistically, nothing. I had keys to the game in that long tweet, and we failed all of them. It made no sense how this game was won, okay? I just want to read some quick stats for you guys here, some team stats. So we'll talk about downs because that's kind of where the game was won and lost. Look at rushing. Notre Dame rushed for 116 yards, 2.8 per carry. Most of that was in the second half. That's horrible. We said you have to win the line of scrimmage. You have to win the trenches this game. We didn't. We didn't on either side of the ball because Penn State ran for 204 yards on his 4.9 yards per carry. Now, to be fair to myself, I said under 5 yards per carry is a key to the game defensively. Very barely did we make that. But Steve, we were getting gushed the first half. Penn State was running horizontally and then vertically on us. We couldn't get them to the edge, and then when we tried to overcompensate it, they were going down our throat. Singleton, Allen, great backs. A lot of respect for Penn State in that game. They really gave us one hell of a fight. But Notre Dame had the flu, and they were really injured. So it's hard to say the dip in performance defensively, what that really is accounted to, because that could be ultimately what decides the next game. Here's another thing, Steve. We lost the turnover battle. One of my keys to the game was don't lose the turnover battle. You don't have to win it. Don't lose it. And they were down 2-0 until the very end. How do you get destroyed in the run game on both sides of the ball, turn the ball over twice to none, and win this game? I could tell you how, Steve. Two things. One, 330 passing yards. Sorry, 267 passing yards. That's the total yardage. We actually outgained them on total yards, which is a little silly. 267 passing yards. We had to play from behind. But one of the things that everybody said, including Josh Pate, who I do like, We don't know if Notre Dame can play catch up. We don't know if they can play that style. What happens when somebody gets ahead of them? Well, Steve, I can tell you what happens. Riley Leonard throws touchdowns. Riley Leonard gets receivers the ball, and we move it down the field. That was one of the reasons we won this game. But here's the big one, Steve. Third down efficiency. What have we ranted about all year? The biggest weakness statistically on this team that scares me is third down efficiency. We are horrid offensively. In the Georgia game, listen, we weren't great, but we were better than them. We were 4 for 14. They were 2 for 12. That was a big factor, but it wasn't like we were great on third down. We were behind the sticks big time. I had to actually double check this, Steve. So Penn State went 3 for 11 on third down. Very solid, less than 30%. Notre Dame defense did its job. What do you think we went for on third down as an offense?
I'm going to go 6 for 12.
If only it was that bad. Steve, we went 11 for 17.
Wow.
That doesn't even make sense. What is the percentage on that? We're well above 50%. That's a 65% completion success rate on third down.
That's huge.
And we weren't even running the ball. Like, I can't imagine the down to distance was great on third down for us. And we got off the field 11 times. Or we stayed on the field 11 times of 17. That's what won us the game. And you know what that is to me, Steve? That's just the clutch factor. That signals this team is clutch. When their back's against the wall, they got it done. And I'm willing to bet they were probably like 2 for 6 in the first half. Most of that was in the second half. So credit to this team, man. This game didn't make sense statistically. Riley Leonard had a pretty meh game, in my opinion. 15 for 23, 223 passing yards. He was clutch. Don't get me wrong. Riley was clutch. 1 touchdown, but 2 picks. Didn't play his best. Wasn't a huge force in the run game. Love didn't get the ball as much. He had 11 carries for 45 yards and a touchdown. That's 4.5. That's pretty good against Penn State's defense. I like that going forward. He also leaped a dude with a knee brace on. And by the way, the touchdown he scored, Steve.
Unbelievable. That
was divine. Like I don't mean Dan Divine either. I'm talking like I don't know how he got that
intervention.
People said the Jeter kick was God blew that one back in. I think God helped out fucking Jay Love on that one. Like, I counted 5 Penn State guys had their hands on him at some point during that play.
Including Lorenzo Carter or whatever the hell his name
Abdul
is.
Carter. Yeah. Big time player. He had a great game. And then Jaden Greathouse, man. 7 yards, 105 touchdowns, and a TD. Those were our top performers. Just statistically, that's kind of the brief top line of it. What were your thoughts on the game? What did you take away from it? And then I'll give you some more of mine.
Mm-hmm. Again, on the theme of a guy being called in when he needs to step up in the moment. Well, first shout out to the guys on the offensive line that, went down and had to be replaced. Tosh Baker came in and, he held his own. He gave up some pressures, but, he played pretty damn good against a pretty damn talented team. Charles Jagosaw comes in at right guard because Rocco Spindler goes down. He was dominant. The Jag might have won an interior offensive line starting position for next year last week, right? Like he was that good. It was impressive. More importantly, Steve Angeli coming in, running the 2-minute drill. You don't have to come away with a touchdown there. You're down by 10. Just get 3. And he comes in and he just gets 3. That's all he needed to do. He did his job. He was accurate. He was timely. There's something to be said about, he could improve his pocket presence, but there's a reason that he's not the starter this year. But damn, man, he's going to compete for the starting job next year at the very least. And the fact that we have a guy that can throw such a beautiful spiral and come out and be completely unfazed in the biggest moment, down 10-0, cold. Just, hey, get in there. The other guy ahead of you just got his head bashed in. Now it's your turn. And he comes out and just says, fuck it, we ball. I'm going to go down there. I'm going to march down this field right now and put my team in a position to win the middle 8. So he comes down, scores those 3. Coach Freeman with that incredible halftime speech telling guys, don't panic, stand up. This is a rock fight. You're in it. And then sure enough, he said, you're a touchdown away from a tie game. Execute. And what do? They execute. They come out with a 10-play, 71-yard drive, taking 5 minutes and 8-play, 75 yards, taking 4 minutes, 14 seconds off the clock. Riley Leonard finishes off, pounds the rock up the middle, 3-yard touchdown run, 10-10, tie ball game. We still have effectively the entire second half to still play at that point, or most of it. It's a whole new ball game. And then all you have to do is just play 2 quarters of fuck you football at that point, and you're good. And they stepped up. And then they give up back-to-back touchdowns. After, they give up a touchdown, then there's the bad Riley interception, another touchdown. In the fourth quarter, there's just under 8 minutes left. And at that point, you were just up 17-10. Now you're down 24-17. But the cojones that this team had to come back down and just make the plays when they needed to. Unbelievable route by Jaden Greathouse. Totally busts his man off the line of scrimmage. He did not slip and fall. His ankles were broken because that was a slot fade that he feigned a slant and then jumped outside on the guy. He broke his fucking ankles at the line of scrimmage, makes the catch, and then the safety has absolutely no chance because he's on skates at that point. Shout out, Jaden Greathouse, and then obviously Riley with a great throw to get it to him. Even though he is wide open, it's just the timing of it, and to find a man like that, it's impressive. They didn't blink. They took every punch and they kept moving, and it just worked, man. It just, one way or another, the will to win was there.
I talked about how this game didn't make sense statistically, but in the post-game win expectancy, which is an analytic, like an advanced analytics metric that takes everything that happened in the game and spits out, okay, who likely won this game? Notre Dame was over 75% likely to win that game. The right team won the game. Despite none of this making sense, Notre Dame was the more efficient team, and they roared back in the second half. We were so much better than them in the second half. First of all, Steve Angeli, we don't win that game without him. That kid was phenomenal. 6 for 7, 44 yards, man, just to come in and play with such coolness, like you said. So many people have dogged on him just because he was a low recruit when we picked him up, but that guy's shown nothing but except the fact that he's a baller. Like, that kid plays. And if Riley Leonard gets hurt in the national championship game, I feel comfortable with Angeli going in there. Mm-hmm. I want to talk about the penalties. I feel like refereeing decisions were a little controversial in this game. One, the hold on Christian Gray that allowed Penn State to run it for a big gain that eventually led to points. That was a big one. Christian Gray got called on a pass interference that he then intercepted. Fair enough. But then there's the brutal one, Steve, because I thought in that third quarter when we had taken the lead, we went up 17-10, I believe. Mm-hmm. I thought this is it. This is it. And to Penn State's credit, they came back. They wouldn't go away. And then we had the chance to take the lead again, and we turned the ball over, right? It was a really bad throw from Riley Leonard. And then Penn State marches on. And as they throw the ball to the end zone, because Drew Aller is kind of a shitty quarterback, let's be honest, he did not play good that game. The ball's underthrown.
By a lot.
By a lot, Steve. And I know I like Greg McElroy, but he was saying that was PI, and I'm sorry, dude. Adon Schuler barely touched him. Adon Schuler was running that way. He didn't get his head around. So what, man? The ball was 5 feet behind them. It's like when the ball's over your head, the refs will signal, uncatchable. So there's no PI. Well, uncatchable's got to go both ways, man. You could take a Don Schuler, send him into the shadow realm, which is where, by the way, that fucking safety for Penn State is still at. Right? Wide open receiver, or Warren, whoever it was. I think it was Warren. That ball's picked off. Jack Kaiser gets that ball every time anyway. This is ridiculous, Steve. And they score, and I thought, that's it. The refs are against us. The team is shooting themselves in the foot. Penn State is just a little too good. I think that's it, man. There's 4 minutes left. I don't know if we can do it. Or maybe there's a little more time than that. But I thought it was over. Going into half, I felt disgusting. It was that field goal that Angeli set up that made me realize, as Marcus Freeman said in the halftime, it's a 7-point game. But I felt dirty. I felt like we don't belong here. This is gross. This is embarrassing. Then we stormed back, and I thought we should have won. Then this happens, and I'm feeling like, well, it was a good effort, but we can't overcome the injuries. We can't overcome the refs. We can't overcome Penn State. There's too much. And what does this team do, Steve? All year, they just march on. And next, all of a sudden, we see an explosive passing offense we hadn't seen in these games. And Riley Leonard hits Jaden Greathouse on that play we spoke about. And the place just blows up. We realize it's on. This team is here to fight. They're not going to lose. And then, okay, Penn State gets the ball. We stop them. We get the ball back. This is it. We're gonna march down the field, Steve. We're gonna win the game. And then we screw the dog. We can't get it going. And we punt it back to them with a minute left. And I'm thinking,
stick to my stomach.
We're gonna lose. This is how we're gonna lose. I almost thought Marcus should have done a fake punt or something on fourth down because I'm like, don't give him the ball back.
You know, with just get number 26 out there, get Buckner out there, and just make some magic happen.
You just needed something, and you only needed like 10 or 15 more yards to be in field goal range. And not good enough. We punted to them. Okay, let's see if the defense can get a stop. And that's when, just like the USC game, Christian Gray, man. Christian fucking Gray. He got called on that PI. The team seemed to target him, even though he's a great lockdown corner. What does he do? Not only is he sticking to his dude like glue, he undercuts the route, dives, and makes a play on the ball. And we're 10 yards from field goal territory. And what does Notre Dame do? When they get the ball back, they don't mess up twice. Riley Leonard rolls out, hits Jaden Greathouse on one of the most clutch plays of the year. And I'm talking about the touchdown. I'm talking about that 3-yard fucking soft coverage little route that he threw on the go, hit him. That's all it was. And then it was down to Mitch Jeter. I almost said Derek. Mitch Jeter gets out there, Steve. And I felt good. I'm going to be honest with you. There's something about this kid, the way he's been playing. And he kicks that ball, and it looks like it's going to just drift right. And then all of a sudden, the spin brings it right back in. Down the middle. Field goal is good. The Fighting Irish win. I don't know if I've ever watched a more back and forth emotional game in my life. That was a heart attack. But man, was it ever a football game. And credit to Penn State. They were good. Singleton's good. Allen's good. Tyler Warren's a beast. Abdul Carter is nonsensical. But the better team won. And we're playing for a national championship on Monday, Steve.
You're absolutely right. Now, I do have a question. Now, this has been harped on time and time again. And I don't mean to be cliche here. I'm just speaking from experience because, unfortunately, I have too much of it, and it's why we have PTSD. It's why we were so emotional to start this fucking podcast. Genuine question, not trolling. Brian Kelly is your coach. How does that game end?
First of all, we don't get to that game if Brian Kelly's our coach. We find a way to either lose to Indiana or we definitely lose to Georgia. I don't know. That's almost like an unstoppable force meets an immovable object because Franklin's balled Brian Kelly, right? So yeah. It's like someone's going to choke this game away. But I would say Penn State wins that game because the mental strength it required to come back, the balls it required to make certain calls, the culture it required to have Tosh Baker go in there as a left tackle and to have Jagasaw, who was out for the season originally, come in as your right guard, to have Steve Angeli come in as your quarterback, and to win the ball game. I don't think Brian Kelly could do that. I don't think so. That would be my long answer, but I think Penn State would have won.
I think we lose 31-10 if Kelly's the coach in that game. So once again, just to harp on it, and again, we want to move on past Kelly, and trust me, I am very well moved on because I am all in on this motherfucker, Marcus. I love him. I legitimately want to name, if I have a boy someday, I want to name him Marcus. Dead serious. But yet it's the mental toughness, it's the fortitude, it's the willpower. It's just culture. It's just straight up culture. This is as professional of a program as it gets at the college football level. Like terrifyingly similar to the way that Saban had run his program. So or program as they say in the South. So
As Brian Kelly would say.
yeah, family. But yeah, kick goes through the uprights. I had the wherewithal in the moment to take a live reaction video of myself, and I posted it, and I retweeted it with the podcast account. And I actually had people ask me like, Steve, were you crying? And I should have, but like
But there's one more.
I was in shock, but it was more an exasperation of holy fuck. This team is different. We did it. Like we did it. We did it. We actually did it. And yeah, it was more exasperation and exhilaration than it was a moment for me to cry. The moment for me to cry will hopefully be next Monday night sometime around midnight. But yeah, no, it's three playoff games down, 3 playoff wins in the books. And we're heading to the national championship for the first time in 13 years. And it just feels so good to be vindicated.
It does. Now, we're a big underdog in that game, but we'll get to that in a minute. I want to bring up our 4 horsemen for this game, guys. Number 1 for me, in no particular order, but the first one I have to mention is Mitch Jeter, man. That guy, listen, to the listeners and to every Notre Dame fan out there, that kid, that man, that grown-ass man, never buys a beer again in his life, okay? You see him at a bar, you're paying for his beer. That's it. The mental strength for him to come back from all those injuries and all those missed kicks, and none of us had confidence in him going to the playoff. For him to just go in there and do his business. Kickers were 0 for 4 in the college football playoff with the chance to take a lead in the fourth quarter. Not that guy. So that's my number 1. He's got it up there. NFL kicker, I think. Number 2, Jaden Greathouse. Huge breakout day for the star. Over 100 yards, big touchdown. And it's not just the touchdown, Steve. It was that third down conversion to put us in field goal range. It was just, you needed 3 yards. Who did you go to? Jaden Greathouse. Him and Faison next year, man, are going to be silly together. I think it's going to be a breakout year for both of them. Shout out to Jaden Greathouse. Huge, huge player for us. Number 3, Steve Angeli. Dude, we lose that game without Steve. And without you, but mostly without Steve Angeli, right? It's like coming in cold when your team is playing dog shit. Your offensive line can't do anything. And you need to score here. Like, you're down 10 going into halftime. And he gets us there. We almost scored a touchdown. Like, we were really moving. Big credit to Steve Angeli. Next man in, everything about it. Just so proud of that guy. So proud of him. Third, I'm debating between 2. So I'll do an honorable mention. Christian Gray, for the reasons I said. Picked on, had that penalty early, came back to vindicate himself. He's a ball hawk. I love the way he plays. Sometimes you want to rip your hair out on some of the grabs, but I trust him. I trust him to get the job done when it matters most. Credit to him and a big shout out to him. But for my 4th one, Steve, little off the board here. True freshman, Aeneas Williams. I want to pull up his stats here for a second real quick. Rushing the ball, Aeneas Williams had 2 carries, okay? 17 yards, 8.5 per. That's pretty good. It's only 2 carries, but he moved the chains for you when you needed him to, right? He was a tough runner, and he's the guy who set up one of those touchdown runs by getting us down to the 5-yard line. So credit to him as a true freshman to come in and play the way he does. And that's where I'm going with it, man. He was second on the team in receiving yards. He had 5 receptions for 66 yards, 13.2 per. Dude, he's Kyron Williams. He is literally Kyron Williams out there, but maybe is a better receiver. Like, that ball that Leonard threw to him on that like fade for him, unreal. And he makes a great play on the ball, runs for some tough yards. Credit to him, man. I don't know if we get it done without Aeneas Williams either. He He's got two backs ahead of him who are superstars. Like one of them is a legitimate Heisman frontrunner next year. And Jadarian Price starts on every team in college football except maybe 5, right? Great player. And they were struggling a bit. Love's sick. Love's got a knee brace and an illness. Who knows how Jadarian Price was feeling. And for him to just kind of get those reps in that game and take advantage of it is just a testament to the culture, to this team, to this program. There's just so much to love, Steve. And to beat Penn State, I know you hate them. I don't like them. Their fans were quite annoying. 9-1 all time, so we took the series lead there. Everything about that felt good. It just was a really good, feel-good game. All that bullshit, big bro talk that James Franklin spoke before the game, trying to little brother Marcus Freeman. How old are you, Marcus? Oh, fuck you, dude. You bald prick. Like, that guy, and out of nowhere, and no disrespect if anyone's bald, okay? Like, that's not the point there. It's just him in particular. But here's the thing that gets me, Steve. They ask him a question about the college football playoff, and he kind of out of turn says, well, I think everyone needs to be in a conference and play a conference championship game. Oh, you mean like Ohio State? Oh, you mean like Texas? Like, what are we doing here, James? Just say you're angry that you're not Notre Dame because Notre Dame gets this perceived privilege because of its status. Once you had that status too, but you guys couldn't maintain it and you went crawling to the Big Ten. So screw him. Don't care for him. Don't care for Drew Aller. Don't care for Penn State, although I do have respect for their team. I will say that. But we got it done, Steve. A better team won, and we're playing for a national championship.
Well said, brother. And that puts a wrap on the one more thought on that. It did feel good to exercise the demons at Hard Rock Stadium down in Miami, because the last time we were there,
I was thinking that.
Yeah, that was 2017 Miami. No, not
2017 Miami. No, you're right. 2017 Miami, and then the national championship game.
Was it 2017? Because when was Ian Book?
Ian Book took over the 2018 season after 2 or 3 games. Brandon Wimbush was the quarterback in 17 through those picks. But also, Steve, the national championship game against Alabama was at that stadium. And that's what I was thinking. When Penn State was winning early in the first half, I'm like, oh, this fucking stadium. We can't win a game here. But to your point, we exercise those demons.
Yeah. All right. Well, 3 playoff games down. Who's your daddy? Dogs done. Penn State. The jokes write themselves.
Put in a penitentiary.
Yeah. So we are moving on to the national championship, but before we get to the game and everything, Dylan, let's hit the mailbag, shall we?
Yeah, a little palate cleanser here to give everybody a little break. We were, talking pretty heavy there for 45 minutes. This is going to be a long one, guys. We missed last week. So we sent out a mailbag. We got some responses, so may as well just read them here. Kenneth Jones, also known as Kickoff by Kenneth, our Alabama friend there, who does a lot of sports journalism and college football history. How hard is Lou Holtz going to dunk on Ryan Day during the lead up to the game? Follow-up question, do y'all change the I need a national championship intro should ND win? Great questions. I was thinking that pre-show that maybe we might have to change the intro song if we do win. I don't know if Holtz is going to dunk on Day during the lead-up, but I hope afterwards he does. I hope afterwards he says one of his trademark Lou Holtzisms and sets that coward-looking hair-dye dude on fire. I don't care for Ryan Day at all. Stop going after an old man. Cap, an Ohio State fan, and I'm only going to read this one because it involves my model. He said, we would like to know who you include in your blue blood to date. And then also, if you erase history and start it now, what 8 programs would be the blue bloods going forward? Then Venn diagram it. I'm not going to do all that for you. So the 8 blue bloods, pretty clear for me. Model-wise, there's a statistical gap between 8 and 9 where I feel comfortable cutting it off. But also, just in terms of like lore and history and tradition, there is traditionally 8 blue bloods that most people agree on, right? CFB Home runs a poll every year, I think. That or it's Pick 6 previews. One of them runs a poll, is X team a blue blood? And we get to the same 8 every year, right? So we've got Notre Dame, of course. We've got Alabama, USC, Ohio State, Michigan, Oklahoma, Texas, and Nebraska. Those are your 8 blue bloods. If we were to move forward, I can't predict the future. I just think blue bloods are something that stays forever. And if the stats and the math ever catch up to it, then we expand what the blue blood means. I'm sorry, guys. I don't think Nebraska's losing their blue blood status just because they've sucked for the last 20 years. There was a period of time where a lot of us sucked for 20 years. Okay. So try to avoid the recency bias there, but those are the blue bloods. And, Steve, I had just updated my model. So there's a lot of cool stuff there. Maybe we can talk about in the off season, but let's just say if Notre Dame wins the national championship, they will have a nice, breathable, comfortable lead. But yeah, so that's it. Dr. Abby says, this one's for you. Steve, at what point do you stop golfing on Saturdays and start watching live again?
That was a couple weeks ago. I forget which game it was. Let's look at the calendar. But I actually have moved a lot of my golf games to Sunday just because that works. Usually at this point, to let you know, in the personal life, we do a family day on Saturdays, and then leading into, obviously watching the Notre Dame games. I think I did not watch live Miami or Purdue. I think I was back by the time Louisville came back around. Yeah, so have been watching all the live games Saturday since then. Sure enough, I broke my promise not to watch them. It is what it is. But yeah, I promise I'll play golf on Sundays.
And she has a follow-up for you as well. Steve, can you come to Atlanta to hang out with us for the game?
If tickets get to a certain point, it's a 5-hour drive for me, and there's a non-0% chance that I pull trig, but we'll see. I have to. I'm a dad now. I got to be responsible.
Something you could do, and you would have to owe your wife a lot for it. Even if you don't get tickets, you could just go to Atlanta to join the parties. Tailgate, do all that stuff too. Just if you're within distance. Dr. Abby has a few more. Easily our best listener, I gotta say. Dr. Abby, you're the best. Her husband, by the way, is an Ohio State fan.
Nobody's perfect.
Just leave that there. No, he's a good guy though. So, for me, Dylan, would you have to pass the American boards to represent athletes for NIL? Willing to be a business partner with you. So I had said, because I don't know if you heard this, Steve, the sports agency is charging 20% fees for these NIL deals, which is outrageous. Professional sports is between 5 and 10% is the market standard. But because they're young people, they're being taken advantage of. So what I said is, listen, I'm a lawyer. I'm a lawyer by trade. I'm licensed in Ontario. I have my law degrees. I don't really do much practice anymore, but I got the background. And I said, I'll do it for you. I'll do it for you for whatever rate it takes. Get me into that industry because it's going to blow up. I don't know if there would be boards to pass. I don't think I would have to pass. I don't think you have to be a practicing lawyer to be an agent. So I don't think I would need to pass any bar exams, but I might need to go through some kind of regulatory hoopla. But yeah, let's get this business going, Abby and others. We should start our own NIL firm. Last one from her. How much do you think BMO, Ben Morrison, is grappling with not playing? Like he's healthy and cleared, so he's got to be jonesing to play. I don't know. Is he healthy and cleared?
Because it was his hip, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if I especially at the cornerback position, and especially with these wide receivers that we're going up against, having a hip is, even if you're a couple months later post surgery and have had some time to recover. I don't know. Just that's extremely high risk. And hey, Leonard Moore has stepped the fuck up. I mean, again, just to harp back on the Penn State game, we didn't give up a single catch to a wide receiver against Penn State. And maybe that's because Drew Aller sucks and is not a good quarterback, but doesn't matter. Benmo, go make your money in the NFL, man. Congratulations on your millions of dollars.
And she said, if you guys were him, if you had one shot, one opportunity to seize everything you ever wanted, would you capture it or let it slip? I'd capture it, but I don't know what he's thinking on that one. First round talent. I'd love for him to come back. Don't get me wrong, but I don't expect it. I think if he were healthy enough, you maybe would play in this game.
Yeah. I'm
going to guess he's not super healthy.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. From Josh, do you think we are going to lose Golden on January 21st? A lot of rumors out there. Can't really extend his most recent extension. I'm not really familiar with any rumors other than one Penn State alum saying he should be their DC there because they just lost theirs to Clemson. I don't see Al Golden leaving for another defensive coordinator position in college football. I'll say that much. Head coaching position, maybe. NFL, maybe. I hope he stays. I get the sense that Al Golden loves Notre Dame. Notre Dame's not for everyone, and I'm sure there's some coaches there in the past who didn't fully embrace it. And I don't mean Brian Kelly in particular. I'm sure there are people on staff who didn't maybe buy into what it is, but I think Al Golden has. I think Al Golden really respects the educational value and the faith that comes with Notre Dame. I also get the sense that he really likes Marcus Freeman, and he said a career revitalization here. So not to say he's got to be loyal or anything like that, but I think he's happy. And unless there's a can't refuse offer, I think he'd be staying, but I'm not on the message board, so I don't know the full extent of the rumors. Steve, what are your thoughts there?
He's 55 years old, so if he wants to, he can go be a head coach and still get a solid 10 years, 15 years left as a head coach if he wants to. But think about how much more added responsibility that comes with, right? And if you're just a coordinator and by all means, he can just let Marcus do a lot of the recruiting. From my understanding, Al is not like out there hitting the recruiting trail. Maybe he is, and I'm uninformed on it. But obviously, head coach Marcus Freeman is the recruiting guy, especially on defense. So he's in a good spot where he has, he can act as a mentor. He's in a program that's really setting him up for success. And if he decides to move on, again, I agree with you. He's either going to be a DC or in the NFL, or he's going to take a head coaching job. He's not going to take a lateral move because he's effectively at the precipice of the position in the sport, at least at the coordinator position. And you're definitely not going to go to from South Bend to Happy Valley. That's not happening. But if he does go, we'll miss him, and thank you for the surface and the revitalization that you've brought this defense. And I think he'll reciprocate in kind and say thank you for revitalizing his career. But more importantly, that opens up Mike Mickens. And Marcus Freeman has built a hell of a coaching tree. And just really quickly, to make a point on a coaching tree, as a Pittsburgh Steelers fan who is 24 hours, 48 hours removed from yet another loss in the playoffs, one of the critiques that I've heard recently that really opened my eyes and to say, holy crap, wow, I didn't think of it before, but it's something to be said. Mike Tomlin is universally thought of as one of the best coaches in the NFL, but he has no coaching tree. He does not mentor men. He does not build them up. He does not have coordinators underneath him that have gone on to be a Kyle Shanahan or any of these other guys like Ben Johnson. And the fact that Marcus Freeman is already building a coaching tree 3 years in, and you have Mickens in there, it's just impressive. It's quite impressive to and Coach Deland McCullough with the the running backs. The position coaches are almost as impressive as the coordinators, and the coordinators are extremely impressive. It's an unbelievable coaching staff, start to finish, top to bottom, and because the coaching staff is so phenomenal, is why we've been able to not blink and punch back when we have been getting hit in the face in these playoff games, and it's why we're heading to a national championship. So, I hope that Golden stays, and we'll see how the future shakes out.
To that point, Steve, what coaching tree does Brian Kelly have at a head coaching level that has succeeded?
Brian Van Gorder?
Yeah, sure. Like Bob Diaco struggled as a head coach. Dan Brock was before Kelly at Notre Dame. He had a lot of time with Kelly, but he was a great coordinator. He's never been a head coach. Don't say Marcus Freeman. That's not part of Brian Kelly's coaching tree. You talk about Mike Tomlin. That's my first thought too, is who has Brian Kelly produced? Nick Saban has produced some of the best coaches in college football.
Mm-hmm.
Kirby, Sark, Kiffin. I'm sure there's more out there. Is Dan Lanning one of his? I'm not sure.
I don't know.
I know he was at Georgia, but anyway. Bitcoin in Ohio. It says, what 5 start on the line? Well, Knapp is out. I think it depends on if Rocco's in or out. If Rocco's in, I think Jagasaw is going to be the left tackle. If Rocco is out, I think Jagasaw will be the right guard and Tosh Baker will be the left tackle. Tosh Baker gave up 5 pressures and a sack. He still played admirably, but I'd be a little afraid. Not afraid, but I would feel more comfortable maybe if it was Jagasaw. I think if it is Baker, he can get the job done for sure. But I think that adds a little more. He's just not as mobile, right? Big boy might help in the run game for sure, but that's my concern. Steve?
You're exactly correct. I have nothing else to add.
Okay. Last one from the #1 Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan. Does Notre Dame have a shot on Monday? Well, in the words of Walter White, you're goddamn right.
Yeah, of course they do.
Yeah, you're the #1 fan,
dude.
You should be
without it.
Yeah, you should be the guy who's, telling us. That's it for the mailbag. Thanks for everyone for participating. I'm sure there'll be more that come in that we didn't get time to because we've just done it. But appreciate the interaction there. Steve, let's just reflect a little bit on this college football playoff season and the playoff itself. I suppose I should say college football season and the college football playoff. Is this the best season in living memory? Notre Dame aside, like for me, 2012 is still the team until this team wins it, but I think this is the best season.
Yeah, it has to be, right? I mean, and it's the okay. I mean, going from the highest of highs into hostile territory to open the season, 100-degree heat, 90-degree heat down in College Station. You come out with a big win. You get a ton of respect on the national stage. Everyone's saying, okay, Notre Dame's legit. Top 5 team, easily. Dark horse national championship. A week later, we're the laughing stock. We're getting memed. We're getting, as low can get, completely dejected. It actually broke me as a human being, as we have, there's literally documented evidence of it. If you just scroll back in the podcast app, whatever you're listening to on either Apple or Spotify or whatever that may be, they broke me. And I'm just a fucking guy in South Carolina yelling into a microphone. Just imagine what that was like for that locker room. But again, those coaches, that staff, that team, the culture, the program, everyone locked the fuck in. And then they just move forward, taking care of the teams that they should have taken care of. Obviously impressive against Purdue, but not the most impressive win against Miami of Ohio. Leading into the following week where, it was a revenge game against Louisville, and that game was tight. But they were resilient. They fought like sons of bitches, and they did what they needed to do to come out with a win. Georgia Tech, okay, you don't get Haynes King, but that's still a talented team. You come out with the win. Navy, everyone's talking about. You blow the doors off of them. Florida State was laughable. Virginia, senior day, just win. Just go out there and take care of business. They win by 3 touchdowns. Army is a damn good football team. It's a legitimate top 20, possibly even top 15 team in the country in terms of talent and scheme. You go out and blow the doors off of them. And then we all know how things ended at USC on the road. So before we even start recapping on or even touching on the playoff, I mean, it was a magical ride. Again, highest of highs, lowest to lows. But, we said at the time, congratulations, Notre Dame. You've made the playoffs in week 2 because, you have to lock in and there's now no room for error and you have to win out. And, there's really no room for mistakes. And I don't even know that they made a mistake those final 10 games of the season. And they just got it done. And again, just a massive testament to the coaching staff to get these players, young kids, to get to that point. So, Dylan, I'll let you riff on it.
Young kids at the University of Notre Dame with their academic rigors. So you had to not only balance going to school and getting good enough grades, you had to lock the fuck in every week because of that NIU loss. This might go down as one of the, if we win the national championship, it might be one of the most remarkable stories, remarkable paths to get here. Ohio State's had a very difficult path, don't get me wrong, but I think the Notre Dame story is unique. I think from college football's perspective as a whole, the season's been interesting, right? You had Army and Navy ranked at the same time. That was wonderful until a certain school blew them out of the water. You have the Indiana storyline this year going from basically projected to be last in the Big Ten to nearly winning the Big Ten. Kurt Signetti, personal arrogance aside, pretty good coach, wins a lot, got the job done. His 2 losses this year are to teams playing in the national championship. You take a look at the BYU story, similar story. We're not even supposed to be competitive. Nearly won the Big 12. The Big 12 in general was a great story this year with all the chaos
State
ball
too,
going on. Arizona State, even Colorado had a great season. Miami was kind of back for a little bit. The death of the SEC. How about that this year? We have gotten to a point where the SEC is no longer the top dog, and I don't think we can debate that after this playoff. After the bowls and the playoffs, the Big Ten went like 5-1 against the SEC. Right? Ohio State kicked the shit out of Tennessee. Notre Dame out-physicaled and out-executed Georgia. Ohio State beat Texas. Like, Arizona State almost beat Texas. You know what I mean? Like, I think the SEC is kind of, well, Steve, what happens when they're not the only ones paying kids anymore? Turns out there's a lot more parity to the sport than we thought.
Yeah. Funny how that happens.
Crazy. I tell you what, the best athletes in the country might be in the Southeast, but the big alumni money is in the North. So we're going to see a lot more parity in the sport. Just a great season. Love the storylines. Ohio State losing to Michigan and then roaring back to be in this game. That's a great storyline. Alma mater, Ohio State, from Marcus Freeman, team he lost to 2 times in a row. One was bullshit, but, chance to redeem himself. What a storyline. I mean, the 2 biggest fan bases in the sport going at it, the national championship game. What a storyline. Notre Dame getting over the hump finally. What a storyline. Penn State kind of getting there is a storyline. It's just, what a season. It was chaotic. Nobody knew. I mean, rankings going into the playoff, the conference championship week or the week before were all over the place. We thought we were going to play Tennessee at one point. What a season. And the playoff has been a smashing success, I think. Despite the blowouts, I don't want to hear it. The NFL has blowouts too. At least there's heart and soul in this game. I loved it. The first round on campuses, man. Just what a season. I love it. And obviously as a Notre Dame fan, I'm biased because we went through this Cinderella run, but it's just, I think from a sport as a whole, it's been the best year in my memory. I can't remember any other year where it's been this fun. People say it's 2007 for chaos. That may be so, but
this year
I don't know. Gave it a good run. I love it, and that leads us to one more game for a national championship between 2 blue bloods, 2 Midwestern teams, 2 large fan bases, 2 very different cultures for everything. And here's the thing: both of our hated rival won last year. So we both need to win this year, right? That's the Ohio State motivation. Michigan won a national championship, allegedly, quote unquote. Ohio State spent $1 bazillion on a roster because they said that's unacceptable. We have to win one. And that's going to be their motivation this whole season and going into this game is Michigan won one. Their whole lives are wrapped up in Michigan. It's kind of weird. Like there was a poll preseason that says, what matters more, winning a national championship or beating Michigan? Beating Michigan won the poll. It's nuts. They're wrapped around that. But nobody hates Michigan more than I do. I'm pretty sure about that. I grew up, they tortured me. Us Catholic Notre Dame folks got a little bit of a history with that, They weren't too fond of that. They kept us out of the Big Ten. We hate Michigan. So we need to win this one. Plus, Michigan claims 12. We're on 11. We have to win it. 2 teams need to win this championship game. There's just so much at stake here, Steve. How are you feeling? Because I felt shitty about this until about yesterday. I was worried. And then I locked in. How are you feeling?
I was feeling obviously thrilled that we were going to the national championship. And I never thought that we wouldn't be competing in the game, regardless of who we were playing, Texas or Ohio State. But I'll tell you what, I did watch that Texas-Ohio State game, the semifinal, on Saturday night. I felt so much better after watching the game. I would have told you that we would, probably be 10 to 13 point, underdogs against Ohio State if they had won. And I would have said it would have been much closer if it were Texas. I knew Texas had some flaws in them, and ultimately those were exposed in that game. But Ohio State has some flaws too. They're not perfect. They are the $20 million roster, but they're not perfect. I mean, they did lose to Oregon, who, they in the regular season, they consequently stomped them in the playoff. They barely hung on against Nebraska. They won by 4 points. They won by a touchdown on the road at Penn State. Okay, yeah, they did take care of Indiana quite handedly, but, Indiana is just not on the level. And then they have that really embarrassing loss to, obviously, the cheaters up in Ann Arbor. And when they did lose against Michigan, it's because they tried to play trench warfare. Ryan Day got in his own head. And I think that's a huge storyline to go into this game. You look at the masterclass of coaching and leadership that Marcus Freeman has had through his 3 playoff games to get us on this path. He's been phenomenal. And then on the flip side of that, you have just an absolute basket case in Ryan Day, who is just a deeply unlikable person. And when he tried to just go straight up and slug in the trenches against that Michigan team, he lost. Now, of course, they have outrageous wide receivers. They're insane. Carnell Tate, Emmanuel Ekbuka, Jeremiah Smith, they're all phenomenal. It just feels like, there's matchups and things that work in Notre Dame's advantage. And that's why I think we can compete. Do I think we're going to win? I mean, I think I'm spoiler alert, I'm going to take us to win because, I'm me and I have not changed over the past 7 years that we've been doing this. But I'll tell you what, I mean, we obviously have great cornerbacks, including Jordan Clark in the slot, along with the guys on the outside. We have a great secondary, and we have a team that can play downhill, and we know that we can stop the run against incredible offenses so far that we've seen, incredible offensive lines and incredible running backs in Georgia and Penn State. So I think that we can force them to pass by clogging them up. And, Howard is good, but he's not great. I'm not terrified of Howard. And it's just, before Friday night, I would say, damn, we're up against some juggernauts, and it's going to take a miracle for us to be able to compete. And after watching that game, I mean, let's call it what it is. If Texas doesn't have the worst play calling of all time, that's a 21-21 game going into overtime. And I think Notre Dame pretty much beats Texas straight up, probably 8 out of the 10 times they play, if they were to. So I think that the best 2 teams in the country are playing for the national championship is the way that it worked out. I don't care about paths and seeding and all that sort of shit. These are the 2 best teams, and we belong. And it's going to be a rock fight, and we can kind of get into some X's and O's and scheme and all that sort of stuff, but I don't know, Dylan, what are your initial thoughts?
Well, they're human, and that was my biggest concern. So I just want to pull up the Oregon game here for a second. Ohio State wins 41-21, and that's almost generous. That game was done by the first quarter. Here's some top performers. Will Howard, 17 for 26, 319 yards and 3 touchdowns. Tavion Henderson, 8 carries and 94 yards, 2 touchdowns. That is over fucking 10 yards a carry. That's ridiculous, right? He's a fastback. Receiving, Jeremiah Smith, 7 receptions, 187 yards, 2 touchdowns. How do you play against that, right? Like, that is unstoppable. Total yards 500 to 276 for Ohio State over Oregon. I just needed to see them be human, and that's what the Texas game was, right? This is the team that struggled to beat Nebraska, that lost to Michigan, that lost to Oregon at one point. I've been saying all year I think Ohio State's the most talented team. I don't disagree with that now. They're not as good as the Tennessee and Oregon performances are. Those are outliers. And they were phenomenal outliers, don't get me wrong, and they were well earned, well deserved. But the Texas game brought them back down to reality because Texas has an elite defense. What does Notre Dame have? An elite defense. The post-game win expectancy for Ohio State, despite that could have been an overtime game, was still something like 98%. They still were the better team. Better team won. But think about this, Steve, right? You have a screen pass at the end of the first half after Texas scores that goes for 80 or 90 yards. Henderson hits the hole and he is gone. That doesn't happen often. You also have a fumble 6 from Sawyer at the end to ice the game. Those don't happen that often. Those are mistakes hopefully Notre Dame will not make. So it's not like the game was out of reach for Texas by any means. They could have been heading to overtime. And Ohio State needed a few things to go their way. Now, Ohio State's offense was slowed down. Texas got pressure. Texas stopped the run. Texas was able to limit the receiver. So let's go to that game. Here's their top line stats. I just read you the ones from Oregon. The ones from Texas. Will Howard, 24 for 33, 289 yards, a touchdown interception. It's a good game. Not amazing. It's a good game. Tavion Henderson. Remember how he went for 8 carries and almost 100 yards? This time, 6 carries for 42 yards. You know, what's the math on that, Steve?
I don't know. I'm very dumb.
Hold on here. You know, is that 46 for 6? 42 for 6. 7 yards per carry, right? Still good, but he didn't destroy them. It was that screen pass, right? That doesn't happen too often. It's not like Ohio State had a phenomenal game on the ground, right? You look at their team stats for that one. They rushed for 81 yards, 3.4 per attempt. Okay? That's Texas's defensive line that did that, and Texas' defense line's great. Don't get me wrong, but Notre Dame's got a good one too. And then receiving, Carnell Tate was actually their top receiver, 7 receptions for 87 yards. So they held Jeremiah Smith to very little. My point being here, Oregon represented, and Tennessee, the best of Ohio State. But they weren't playing amazing defenses. Texas is an elite defense. Notre Dame is an elite defense. Here's the thing, Steve. Ohio State's offensive line is, I think, their weakness. They're down a left tackle and they're down a center. No, don't get me wrong. That is nothing compared to the injuries Notre Dame had. Just along the offensive line. Never mind Benjamin Morrison, right? Best corner in the country. Riley Mills, one of the better defensive tackles in the country. 2 edge rushers. But still, they've had some injuries. That offensive line can be got. And Notre Dame's defensive line is stout. Now, they weren't great against Penn State. I have a theory that a lot of that has to do with the fact that the backups had the flu, and I don't think they rotated as much as they wanted to, and if they did, they weren't as effective as they'd like to be. I don't expect to see that. Do I expect the Georgia defensive line? Maybe not, but somewhere in between there will be good enough. The way the linebackers play, I have confidence in our ability to stop the run. Is Al Golden going to play man coverage? Notre Dame did that last year with Ohio State with pretty good efficiency, but that was Benjamin Morrison. Can Christian Gray do it? Can Leonard Moore do it? These are big questions. I think we're going to have to get more pressure on the quarterback. We didn't get a ton on Aller. I thought Aller, we took maybe 1 sack, or he took 1 sack. I think we need to get more. We need to get home more, especially if we're going to blitz. But what we did against Ohio State 2 years ago, if I recall, is we bracketed them deep. We had 2 safeties over the middle, and we said, you're not going to beat us here. We're going to take away this side of the field, and you're not going to have much to throw at. So they slowly moved the ball moving forward. I don't know if Al Golden goes back to that. We'll see. I mean, he's a great game planner, and I think where Notre Dame has the advantage going into this game is I think I think our coaches are better. I think we're going to come in with the right game plan. They're going to have a good game plan too. Don't get me wrong, but I trust in these guys to make the most out of this situation. But where I think we're best is at the halftime adjustments. We've been phenomenal all year. Look at the Penn State game. That the coaching adjustments made at halftime in the Orange Bowl were ridiculous. The way they got their boys to play was ridiculous. I like us there. I like us in the middle eight. And here's the thing, Steve. When we played Alabama in 2020, the game plan was, long drives, try to drain the clock. And that wasn't going to work against Alabama because their offense was just too good. They were going to score too many points. You had to match them. College football has changed a little bit. And the running the ball, longer drives is more of a factor these days. And I think our defense is way more able to play against this Ohio State offense than we were that Alabama offense back in 2020. Games can go by quick. You put together one or two long drives and get a stop, and all of a sudden it's 10-7 going at halftime. And I think that's what we need. We need to make this a dogfight. We need to take them out into deep waters. We need to play our game. If we play the pace we want to play in the style of game we want to play, I like our chances. If we are down 14 to start the second quarter, I'm scared. My biggest concern is falling behind too far. So my key to the game, number one, is you have to start hot. We need, whether that means holding them to a field goal in the first quarter or whatever, or if it means scoring first, you need to have this game be within distance the whole way through. And I trust our guys to come back, but it's just with how explosive Ohio State is. You come back on them like Texas did, and all of a sudden, screen pass, 80-yard touchdown. So that can't happen, right? So we got to start off quick against Ohio State. Middle eight is where we've been good all year. That needs to continue. We need to keep playing the way we're playing with our coaching, with how good the coaches have been, with our decision making, and the ability to close out halves and to start halves. That's going to be a big one. Offensively, something's going to have to happen this game. People are dogging too much on Notre Dame, in my opinion. Look, we played Georgia and Penn State and didn't look phenomenal offensively. What teams do? Notre Dame averaged almost
phenomenal defenses.
40 points a game we've averaged this year almost, going into the playoffs, right? I'm not saying this is the most explosive offense in the world, but we have we'll have a really good wide receiver core. It doesn't get the credit it deserves because their numbers aren't fantastic, but they're by committee. Leonard has the ability to throw the ball. We saw it. We saw the deep ball against Indiana, that when he steps into the pocket. We saw the deep ball against Penn State last week with Aeneas Williams. We saw Notre Dame throw for a lot of first downs against Penn State. They can do it. I think we're going to need to mix in a little more of the passing game. Now, don't get me wrong. They're going to have to run the ball too. And that's what Michigan does. That's how Michigan beats Ohio State. They've been able to run the ball. So controlling the line of scrimmage, it's going to be tough. They got a great defensive line. Like Georgia, we didn't get a lot in the run game until later. That's okay. We could win that kind of game, but you have to win on the defensive line of scrimmage, which I think we can because I don't think their offensive line is amazing. Anyway, those just quick off of my head going into this. They're a great team. They're really talented. But football at the end of the day is not played on paper. It's played on a field. It requires execution, fundamentally sound. And Notre Dame is the most fundamentally sound and the toughest team Ohio State will play all year. I have no doubt about that. Well, nobody's tougher than us, and nobody's more fundamentally sound than us. So going into this game, I think the betting line originally at a 9.5 was outrageous. I think this is a close game, but you got to keep it close. That's my biggest concern.
Agreed. And, their defensive line is great, but something I noticed in that Texas game, obviously we know that their edge rushers are great. JTT and the other kid who had the sack fumble 6.
Sawyer.
I forget. Yeah, Jack Sawyer, whatever the hell his name is. I don't care. But the center, the middle, the interior of their defensive line looked soft. Texas was able to run the ball up the gut. They were able to move it on them. Michigan had, I think, 172 yards rushing against them. Now, I think, and obviously that's because Michigan was just running and running and running and running. But the fact is, push where there's mush. And I think in this, you run it right down their throat, there's going to be opportunities, especially, come on, Jadarian Price, Jay Love, in Ace Williams, running backs by committee, and then your fourth running back, which is your quarterback. It's a game changer, and I think we have. I think we're going to run the ball a lot better than a lot of people are expecting. Now, yes, we are going to have to pass the ball, and Leonard is going to have to step up in those moments. But I think because of his elusiveness and because of his size and the way that he plays, for better or for worse, again, he's a college quarterback and a game manager, and that's great and fine. He's one look, and if it's not open, he's moving. And I think that can help neutralize Sawyer and JTT on the edge. So, yeah, they do have elite edge play. There's a callback for you. But I think that can be neutralized by a really mobile quarterback. And as we saw with Leonard, even when he is scrambling, he actually does a phenomenal job of keeping his eyes downfield. Even if he doesn't even take the throw, the fact that his eyes are still downfield keeps linebackers, safeties on their heels and allows for him to get a few extra yards, and he's just that squirmy little worm that can find a way to get past that first down marker.
He's not scared. Like, he doesn't get happy feet because he feels the pressure. He gets happy feet because the pocket's closing and he knows he can run, and he keeps his eyes up. He's a gamer, dude. He's a total gamer.
It's sheer willpower. And man, oh man, please, Riley, just lead us to the promised land. And I'm hopeful and I think he can do it. Now, Ohio State does push the ball downfield through the air. But something that I notice is that Will Howard is not exactly the most accurate passer downfield. He just knows that he has elite wide receivers and he trusts them and he just throws the ball up to go get them. Now, calling back to what you had said before with the double brackets, I'm confident that our front seven can stop the run. We have phenomenal linebackers that can come downhill and absolutely destroy and blow up running backs. If you have a Don Schuler and Xavier Watts play the center fielder role and really patrol the back there, that's going to open up opportunities for interceptions, man. Because, if Howard trusts his guys, but I trust our secondary equally as much, possibly more. And all it takes is just kind of the right moments. Now, they're going to try to draw a PI from Christian Gray. Christian Gray's very aggressive. But I think there's an opportunity for us to get turnovers in the secondary. Again, he's a good quarterback. He's not a great quarterback in Will Howard. Yeah, he is mobile, but he's definitely not as mobile as Riley Leonard. So again, it's all going to come down to the linebackers of handling the run game and making sure that he can't be mobile. So that way our safeties can play back and make sure that they're protecting those corners. And if they do, that's a key to the game and a key to winning.
Can I pull up a few lessons from the Texas game here?
Yeah.
So just kind of reflecting on what Texas did and looking at kind of what the numbers bear. Texas threw the ball on them, man. 283 yards. Now look, Ewers is a better passer than Leonard. They got better receivers, don't get me wrong. But you can pass on Ohio State. I don't believe their front seven is better than their back end, in my opinion. And I know Caleb Downs is a monster. That dude is going to be a high draft pick one day playing in the NFL. And there's no doubt about that. I don't mean to disrespect the secondary. I just think you can throw the ball on them. They will get open. And that's going to be something that we have to exploit. I think Riley Leonard is the X factor in this game. And yeah, it's easy to say the quarterback matters the most, but I don't even necessarily mean from a purely passing perspective. Because I think one thing we did much better against Georgia than we did at Penn State was quarterback runs. Leonard had a much more effective game on the ground against Georgia. Part of that was scrambling. Part of that was just they were able to design open space for him. And I think they got to do that better. I think that's going to be a critical part of the Ohio State game. And then you're going to get some passing lanes open because they're going to have to spy you or they're going to have to bring extra men down. There's going to be something there that creates an opening for Mike Denbrock. Here's some lessons, Steve. Penalties. Ohio State against Texas, 9 penalties for 75 yards. They're a bit of an undisciplined team, and we have in the past been undisciplined. But this is one opportunity where we, Notre Dame, which is a very opportunistic team that doesn't really beat themselves, can have a huge advantage in a close game like this. You stay clean and you let them take penalties, that's gonna add up. That kind of kept Texas in the game, I think, because that's 75 yards. It's a drive that they were given. On the flip side, Texas had 5 penalties for 54 yards, right? So there's still, there's still penalties both ways here, but Ohio State had more penalties against them. Being disciplined and them not is going to be, I think, one aspect where Notre Dame can, let's say, exploit the team. And here's another lesson. Turnovers, Steve. Turnovers, visually watching the game, how did the game end? On a turnover. 2-1. Texas had 2 turnovers. Ohio State had 1. Can't lose a turnover battle. In fact, when I said you can't lose a turnover battle to Penn State, that meant draw or better. I will say now, you have to win the turnover battle. We need to generate at least 1 to win this game, I think, because that offense is so explosive. You need to get them off the field. And you can't turn the ball over. And that's what Texas did twice, and it cost them. If Texas has 1 turnover in that game's going to overtime. Simple as that. So there's some lessons here. Ohio State is great, but Texas, I think, brought them back down to earth a little bit, where this is still a very mortal team. They're a team that has lost twice this year, the team that barely beat Nebraska. They're just playing really well, and they can put you away. Don't get me wrong. It could be 28-0 going into halftime again. I sure as fuck hope not. But it's possible. They got that ability. I just think that styles make fights, and Notre Dame in many ways, I think, I've been saying for weeks now, emulate the Michigan team last year. And what's the one team Ohio State can't fucking beat anymore? It's Michigan. Part of that is the mentality. Michigan was a tough team. Mentally tough, but physically tough too. They run the ball on you. Notre Dame does that. Notre Dame is really well coached. Notre Dame is really fundamentally sound. These are all things Michigan teams have had in the past, and I hate even saying that. But that is a blueprint there. I think Texas has provided a bit of a blueprint as well. So 9.5 points, I think, is disrespectful. But, if I was an odds maker, of course I'd have them favorites. They blew out Tennessee and Oregon by 20-plus points. I just think that we're going to see a much different game. And these 2 teams have played 2 very close games in the last 2 years. So I'm expecting fireworks, Steve.
I agree. And we can get into predictions here in just a minute. Just to wrap up the preview and some keys to the game, the final 2 things that I am looking at, particularly in the Penn State game against Ohio State, actually. Warren had 3 receptions for 47 yards. And then, Warren had 3 carries for 47 yards. That's particularly.
He's a rusher and a receiver, dude. He is the shit.
Yeah, he's the go-to guy there. But Singleton had 6 catches for 54 yards against them. Warren had 4 catches for 47 yards. One thing I know, and Blue, the running back for Texas, had 2 receiving touchdowns on wheel routes against Sonny Styles.
Yeah.
What I'm getting at is that, of course, I want Notre Dame wide receivers to make plays, but more importantly than anything, I think the running backs and the tight ends, Mitchell Evans, Eli Raridan, and your running backs are going to be absolutely integral into having Riley Leonard make plays, make his checkdowns, because where do tight ends and running backs typically run their routes? Right in the middle of the field, right in front of your face, typically 4 to 7 yards from the line of scrimmage. And if you're looking for a guy that needs to dink and dunk his way down the field in order to avoid a vicious pass rush, that's going to be the way to do it. And if you can find Jadarian and Love in space in the field, if you can get them that ball 7 yards past the line of scrimmage in open space, they can be absolutely lethal and deadly. So I think that might end up being a difference maker, is how often and how frequently Riley Leonard can find his backs and wide receivers in the passing game, because that's going to have to take the pressure off the pass rush, especially with a banged up offensive line. So that's the kind of the last of the X's and O's that I see in it. I think that Notre Dame, again, as you say, styles make fights, and I really think that this is a great opportunity for them. So, I mean, that's without further ado, and I'm ready to move on to the score predictions if you are.
Yeah, just last few thoughts here. One, Notre Dame should have won that game last year. It was one of the most gut-wrenching games I've ever watched, just with the way we found a way to lose. That has to be avenged. And if you told me you're going to suffer 2 close defeats to Ohio State and deal with obnoxious Ohio State fans, but you get to beat them in the national championship, I'm taking that. And I guarantee you they would all take that either. 2 regular season games for a title game, not even close. So I want to talk about just a few more keys to the game, I think, briefly here. Red zone efficiency, I think, is huge. Notre Dame has been shit in the red zone for some time. Indiana, Georgia got in the red zone a bunch, settled for a lot of field goals. Those got to be converted. On the flip side, Ohio State's going to move the ball on you. If you can keep them to 3 points, that is a huge win every time it happens. So red zone efficiency, huge. Third down efficiency, also huge. How do we beat Penn State? By going 11 for 17 on third down. I don't expect that this game, but you got to be better than them, just like the Georgia game. Just be better than them on third down. Get off the field more. Let your offense do something. Stay on the field more. Give your defense a rest. Those will be big to the game, I think. I think those are the micro stats that I'm looking at. If you told me Notre Dame is more efficient in the red zone and is better on third down, I will tell you they win the game. If you tell me Riley Leonard has maybe the best game of his life, maybe an exaggeration. If you tell me Riley Leonard has, let's say, 300 total yards, I think we win the game. If you tell me the Notre Dame rush defense holds Ohio State under 3.5 yards per carry, I think we win the game. Now, I could be wrong on all of those, but that's what I'm thinking looking into it. So without further ado, Steve, you said score predictions. Give me yours, and I will give you mine.
It's the recent history. It's 2 blue bloods. It's Marcus Freeman versus old team. It's Ryan Day, that loudmouth fucking bitch, against Lou Holtz. It's the precipice of everything that we've been looking for. It's hopefully the end of 34, 35. I don't even know how many years of pain at this point. It's a date with destiny. And the Notre Dame Fighting Irish are going to go into this game in Atlanta, Georgia, and come out 100 years after their first national championship. And they are going to come out with a victory, 20-14.
Oh, I love it. That just gave me chills. Steve, I'm with you. Notre Dame's going to win this football game. I've only ever picked this against us once, man, and that was when Alabama played us in 2020. I just knew we weren't winning that game. I don't feel that way. I'm not confident for sure we're going to win this game, but I know we can. I know with this team we can. With this coaching staff we can. And I think the will to win will persevere. And I don't care how many injuries we suffer, because every time we've suffered them this year, Steve, it hasn't mattered. Play hasn't dropped off. Our secondary got better when Benjamin Morrison was hurt, right? Riley Mills gets hurt in Indiana, and what do we do against Georgia? 2-point-something yards per carry. This team they're just built different. They're built different. And not to say Ohio State isn't. Ohio State is a very good football team. I mean, you have to say that or else their fans will slaughter you. They are good. But Notre Dame's going to win this game. They are. I got this 27-24 with a missed field goal from Ohio State. I think this game, my one prediction on a stat line for you, Steve, is that Ohio State will miss 1 field goal at some point in this game. I think special teams might be the difference. I think a fake punt in a critical situation might be the difference. And I think Mitch Jeter playing Mitch Jeter ball might be the difference. So I'm going to take the Fighting Irish to win a close game and to become the 12th claimed, 14th NCAA recognized, and 23rd all-time national champions. What say you?
I'm with you, man. I'm with you. I'm getting chills. I'm getting emotions again. I'm tearing up. I'm welling up. It feels good to be back at this point and have this opportunity. And I'll tell you what right now, even if things don't go the way that we hope they do, this was a unbelievable season. And in the words of Chubbs from Happy Gilmore, it's only just begun. The future is bright in South Bend. And I'm just happy that we have the best head coach in the game at the helm leading this team. So with everything said, I'm going to end it with go Irish.
I'm with you, Steve. If we lose this game, it'll be heartbreaking, but it will be a very successful season. We exercised the New Year's Six demon twice. We thought a good season would be hosting a playoff game and winning one, and then after that, it's gravy. Well, I'll tell you what, buddy, we've won 3, and it's going to be 4. 2024 national champions, Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Let's hope so. And if not, we'll get back to you next week. And if we do, you'll hear from us next week, because either way, we'll be here. Thank you guys for listening. Rate, review, 5 stars, all that fun stuff. Give us a subscribe at Horseman Pod on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky. Anywhere you can find your podcasts, we are there. So join us in what will be one of the biggest games in all of our lives as Notre Dame plays for a national championship against the Ohio State Buckeyes. And like Steve said, go Irish.